Hello, everybody. I'm John Felt. Welcome to the weekly water outlook for December 27th, 2015. Hope everyone had a safe and peaceful Christmas holiday. I used to always say, sort of a observation of mine is between Christmas and New Year's is when we begin to see the major winter storms. And there's a lot going on to cover in this briefing. We have a major winter storm going on. But before I get to that, let's take a look at the precipitation over the last week. And the precipitation over the areas that are in red indicates an estimate of over 5 inches of rain or snow or liquid equivalent. You can see that parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia were hit by quite a bit of very heavy rainfall. We also had a lot of severe weather in that area. It's been on the news. Flooding, flash flooding, has been very wet. You can see over south parts of Alabama, a smaller part of Georgia, even some purple indicating near 10 inches of rain. So that's been one of the hot spots. The second area that we're looking at is right there from parts of North Texas across Oklahoma, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, another area of over 5 inches of rain. And then the far western part of the U.S. Remember last week I said it might reach into Northern California. There was some drought relief in this area right here that has been actually very dry in a long-term drought. So that's been welcome in that area. But not so much so in these other areas. Quite a bit of flooding and lots of problems. You can see the streakiness here in the estimates here, these streaks. That's indicating to me thunderstorm activity when you see those streaks, especially southwest to northeast. So when we look at the past 30-day percent of normal, you do see that the areas stand out that are vulnerable. These are areas in purple. This is indicating where there's been at least 4 inches, if not more, excess rain or snow, liquid equivalent over the last 30 days. So the story so far this winter has been adequate, if not excess precipitation over a large part of the central and southeast U.S. as well as the Pacific Northwest. And even other areas that haven't been in that core of unusually heavy rain, I don't see any really deep shades of yellow, so that's indicating close to normal precipitation. So it's been an active start to the winter. If we want to see how much snow fell over the last week, here we go. Generally modest amounts of snow in that band that extends across the Midwest, the upper Midwest, into parts of the Great Lakes. The maroon colors are generally 1 to as much as 6 and maybe 8 inches in a few spots. Higher snowfall amounts in the higher elevations in the west, and a scattering of snow reports over the northeast U.S. Now it's going to be much more active this week as far as snowfall goes, as well as ice. I'll be talking about that just in a minute. But let's take a look at where the snow is currently on the ground. The areas of that medium shade blue, not the very lightest, but the medium shade, is indicating about 4 to 8 inches of snow. So the upper Midwest is starting to get a modest amount of snowfall on the ground. And we might say, is that melting? So let's take a look at snow melt. And here's your snow melt. And other than the area along the periphery of that snow band in yellow, that's where active snow melt is occurring. You can see that temperatures are cold enough that that snow is not melting. And really late in December, you wouldn't really expect it to anyway. So we're in climatologically a time of year where we would expect to start to build up an accumulation of snow. Okay, now let's talk about the current setup. It's quite interesting. I wanted to show you a temperature map, and don't get too hung up on the temperatures, but I want to show you the very abrupt boundary between cold air, which is the blue. You can see as of mid-morning, temperatures were only in the single digits and even below zero in a number of spots over the north central U.S. But then look at the southeast U.S. temperatures. We're starting off very quickly in the 70s. So when you have that boundary, it tells me right away that we have the potential for some active weather, a contrast in temperature. I drew a red line there. The other thing that it gives me some indication is that if we would get an area of low pressure developing along that, which we will, very deep area of low pressure, it's going to tend to move along that alignment, along the temperature alignment. So that's another clue that we can get just by looking at temperature. Now we're starting off with very active stream flow. We're running into unusually high, and in some cases even record high stream flow. These are the forecasts. Communities that are shaded in red and purple are expected to get significant flooding, and this is a type of flooding that could impact secondary roads or homes. Particularly the purple, that's major flooding, and they could even be higher in spots when we get all the rain on the ground. So it's been very active over the middle part of the nation, scattered areas of the southeast U.S. as far as flooding goes. Now, as we get into a discussion of the forecast, you hear me talk about the Arctic Oscillation a lot, and I've been looking at a lot of different parameters over the last couple of days as we get into January. Because remember I mentioned that one scenario that I thought we needed to keep an eye on is that as we get into January, especially the latter part of January, that we might get into this sort of option B where we go away from what we had early winter and maybe get into a little bit harsher type conditions. That was just an option, just a possibility. But right now the models are showing that this positive Arctic oscillation associated with this really mild pattern could be breaking down as we get towards the end of the year and into early January. And the red lines here, which are the forecasts you can see, do go into negative phase into the first half of the month of January. Now, it's interesting to see that, sort of looking at roughly the mean of the ensemble here, we haven't seen anything like that all winter so far. So there is the possibility of a change. I'm not sure if it's going to be an extreme change, but considering how we've started off, it is definitely going to be more like winter than we've had so far this season. So here's a jet stream this week. We start off with this pattern that we're very familiar with now, with a sort of a dip in the jet stream in the southwest. This is going to eject energy up into from the southwest to the northeast. We have a lot of moisture with this. This is a water vapor image, mid and high level moisture, shades of white. And if you track it down here, look at this. The source region is those very warm El Nino type waters in the equatorial Pacific, and it's bringing it right up into this boundary right here. So we're getting that. Remember, those sea surface temperatures can do two things. Number one, provide energy because of the heat. Heat is energy, a form of energy, but it also evaporates a lot of tropical moisture in the atmosphere, and it can transport it up into our region. So when I see that type of precipitable water, that's one reason we're getting so much rain. Now here's a very interesting map I came across. This is lower level precipitable water, which is a measurement of the entire amount of moisture in the atmosphere in purple. That's showing very, very high amounts of moisture. But if you look really closely, these are streamlines, and you can see them moving from this direction here. This is the Gulf of Mexico down here at low levels coming all the way in from the Gulf of Mexico. And look at how they're converging just so abruptly along this line. That's the line that the heaviest rain has been falling along. Moisture's coming from this direction. It's coming from the north here. It only has one way to go as it bumps together, so it goes upward. There's a lot of vertical velocity, a lot of moisture. Matter of fact, if we look at the anomalies of precipitable water, the areas in blue are indicating 4 times normal. So we're looking at 3 to 4 times normal. So it's very clear that we have a lot of moisture, and that's why we've had a lot of rain. Now this week we have one surface track in particular to keep an eye on, the one moving out of the Texas area, sort of a panhandle hook type winter storm. All the little plots here in colors, that sort of gives us some idea of the spread of the models with the actual L plant put in the location most likely for the low track. In any case, you can see it moving pretty much south to north or a little bit southwest to northeast. Give you an idea on timing. Here we go. This is actually on Monday. And look at the widespread shield of precipitation. Red is severe storms, green is heavy rain, and then in the cold air, freezing rain in the yellow here and orange, and then heavy snow. So a lot of precipitation early this week. Here are your rainfall amounts. Unfortunately, more very heavy rain over the southeast U.S. as this front pushes in. Very heavy rain centered over eastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas up into Missouri. So very wet system. And again, some of that will be in the form of snow. And we're looking at over a foot of snow along the core band from parts of Texas up into the upper Midwest. Now keep in mind, winds are going to be very, very strong as well. So we're going to have a lot of blowing snow and blizzard conditions in spots. Now temperatures this week are going to average close to what we've seen in the past, cold in the west, warm in the east. But then as we get into the early part of January, we begin to switch this pattern around a bit. And even here in the middle part of the month, so we begin to cool off temperatures. This is the 6 to 10 day period, and it does look like many areas that have been 10, 15 degrees warmer than normal are going to get closer to normal, and in some cases in the core central part of the U.S. well below normal. Now, if there's any good news to this briefing, is right now week 2 looks much quieter. These are the precipitation anomalies for week 2. We'll keep an eye on it, but look at the Pacific Northwest, looks quite quiet. Look at the Midwest, it's been very active, looks quiet. And look at Southern California, actually a bit wetter than normal where rain is needed. So overall, week 2 looks much better than this week. So here are the current warnings in effect. There's lots of warnings covering just about anything, floods to winter storms, ice and blizzards. And the threats are going to be very significant right through the middle part of the week as the system moves up from the south central U.S. into the northeast U.S. So your takeaway, lots of alerts for this week: disruptive and life-threatening excessive rain and snow, major flooding in spots, significant flash flooding. But the trend overall looks like once this system moves through, we're going to get back to more typical type and quieter winter weather for week 2. If you have any questions, there's my email. Hope you have a great new year, and I will be talking to you again next weekend.